Good afternoon. My name is Frank Steffen. I welcome you to the 37th edition of the live broadcast of the COVID news that we bring you on a daily basis. With me in the studio today, I've got Denver Kisting. Hi, Denver.
Good afternoon, Frank, and good afternoon to our viewers at home and elsewhere.
Yeah, and thank you for accepting my last-minute invitation to come and join me here. As you can see, he's more leisurely dressed today than normally. But we'll never mind that. We're here to bring you news and not so much the dressing code. But
absolutely.
Allow me first and foremost to do what needs to be done as part of our show. We obviously try and engage in cleaning our hands as often as possible, social distancing and all the other things required to keep yourself and us healthy.
Unfortunately, we can't stay at home because we provide a critical and essential service.
Yeah,
we need to be at work.
Yeah, yeah. We'll actually, after this, we'll carry on and prepare the paper, which hopefully you will read tomorrow morning. So, I just wanted to talk a bit about the fact that the Ministry of Health is obviously preparing. They're trying to improve on their capacity in terms of handling a crisis should it arise. They maintain there is none yet, and so they're getting prepared to do their thing. But in the meantime, I just feel, I don't know how you feel about it, but I just feel at the moment things are not running smoothly enough yet. The testing program, we keep on talking about it, but it's not happening. And we've extended our lockdown period, simply saying that we don't have reliable data, so we need to first get that. So the more we procrastinate on getting these tests done, the more likely we'll have an extended lockdown again. And this is becoming a serious economical impact for all of us. Because at the end of the day, the guys who will be paying that account are the same guys who will possibly die of hunger if worst case comes around.
Indeed, Frank. So we know that today is day 30 of the 38-day total lockdown period. And government wanted to gauge whether or not there was community transmission or whether our cases were just imported cases with a couple of contacts within the country. But if we don't gauge the extent to which we've been affected by the pandemic, we can't take measures in terms of the future. And at some stage, we will have to start working on the future. But my consolation at this stage is, had the crisis that we're uncertain about been bigger, we would have heard about our hospitals bursting at the seams, and we would have heard about people passing away, perhaps due to unknown causes. So at this stage, although there is doubt, although there is concern about the way the process is managed, I'm consoled by the fact that we don't hear about crises in hospitals and perhaps in mortuaries. But, more needs to be done. We know that government wanted to work towards 200,000 tests. Whether or not that's going to be accomplished in terms of a goal remains to be seen.
Yeah. Look, I see that's the same thing. It's not only here. I see if you look at the international news channels, Sky News was speaking about England. They also have these huge goals of, I think they want to test 100,000 a day, and they now hope to have 50,000 a day. But given that, I mean, that's still a huge number. In our case, we were supposed to have been able to do 90. In the meantime, it's supposed to be 1,100 a day, and we're not even close to it. We're proud if we make 10. I mean, it's unbelievable. So something needs to be done here on an urgent basis, because people will not stand for it in the long run if the government keeps shutting down businesses, literally forcing the country into a poorer state than it's ever been. And economically, there's no viability. I mean, we're always talking about keeping youngsters at home and not having them leave the country. I mean, this is destined to do exactly that. Because if there's no possibility of making a decent living here, the youngsters will leave.
Absolutely. You know what I also find fascinating? Our colleague Jemima Beekers at Namibian Sun on Friday broke a story that Namibia had allegedly donated a number of kits, in fact thousands of testing kits, to neighboring Zimbabwe. At the time, the Minister of Health, Kalumi Shangula, as well as the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, as also the Deputy Prime Minister, denied any knowledge about this. Yesterday at the COVID-19 Communication Center at the Commerce Regional Offices, the Deputy Minister of Health was there for the health update. And I put this question to her. What she did say is no comment, but we have to bear in mind that our friends are struggling and we're in this together and we need to help each other. And to me, that was conceding that this report was in fact factually correct.
Yeah, and that's the sad part. We don't have our own house in order, but we keep giving stuff away. I mean, generosity starts at home, I suppose.
Charity indeed starts at home, or at least it should.
Yeah. So, well, anyway, so you and our colleague Johanan Kutsia actually went for the test yourselves, and you said it wasn't exactly the nicest experience.
Yes, Frank. Part of the mass testing plans of the Ministry of Health and Social Services was also to test the frontline workers, so both health workers, but also journalists, and especially those who work at the COVID-19 Communication Center from time to time. From the onset, I need to say that we do know how important it is to get tested, especially if you may have been exposed, particularly if you're working in the front line. But as you rightfully said earlier, it wasn't a super pleasant experience. Perhaps I can just walk you through it very briefly. So one arrives at the Robert Mugabe Clinic. I was there at noon on the dot. And then it's as if you're entering holy ground. There's a resounding silence over the premises. You get told to wait a minute, although there was no queue, but someone was leaving and then I could enter. Then you've got to open the soap dispenser with your left elbow, open the tap with your right foot, and then you wash your hands, after which you can dry them, and then you put on the mask. And it's also quite an interesting way of putting on the mask. So you think it looks like a basic mask, but once it's on your face, you get told there's a wire clipping that you need to press against your face so that it fits perfectly over the form of your nose. And then there's another piece that goes over your chin. And then you need to sanitize your hands again, and then you can start entering the clinic, also in a designated area where you're allowed to sit. Then you go to a nurse who takes your administrative details, and also someone that can engage in the event that they can't reach you. And she asked me, how are you doing? I'm like, I'm not doing well, thank you. How are you? And she couldn't understand that. Why would I not be doing well? I said to her, I think that's a rhetorical question under these circumstances. But they're very helpful and very supportive. And then you move to the doctors who were clad in PPE, both of them. They introduced themselves. And I got told to blow my nose, and I informed the doctor I had just blown my nose a few minutes ago at the office, but I was told to blow my nose again. And then I was told that now you're not allowed to cough or sneeze. A doctor telling you not to do that. That made me quite nervous. So after a short while, the swab enters your nose. And the understanding is the process lasts for about 16 seconds. Okay. I promise you, it felt like a whole year. When we were done in the end, I was obviously very relieved, but quite traumatized. It is quite an invasive procedure. It feels quite overwhelming, but I do know that it's important and I do know that it needs to be done. So I have to tell you, I'm anxiously waiting for the call from the Namibia Institute of Pathology about my results. I don't know my status yet, but I did take great care of myself as much as I could to make sure that I don't have the virus, but time will tell.
Yeah, it's almost, I suppose it's almost like taking out a life insurance policy. You're always looking forward to hearing that actually it's passed and you have actually qualified.
Yeah.
But somehow that route or that road towards getting that confirmation
is nerve-wracking.
Yeah, because
did you move a slight bit further away from me yourself, Frank? Yeah.
No, because often you find then you certainly worry about your blood pressure and this and that, and what about the status and that. And that's the same here, because once you've done the test, look, when the result is out, I cannot deny it anymore. It is what it is.
Yes, but I don't know whether the test process was perhaps worse than waiting for the results.
Yeah.
But there is a bit of anxiety involved.
Yeah,
that much I have to be honest about.
No, I think it's a natural thing. Anyway, so we also have a couple of updates now for you.
Yes, so the Ministry of Health and Social Services gave another update at the COVID-19 Communication Center this morning, and we now know that 8 of the 16 confirmed cases have recovered. So we've only got half of the confirmed cases left as active cases, and they're reported to be in a stable condition. What we also know, and this update was shared yesterday morning already at the CCC, about the number of people who have been recruited by the ministry, 1,101. The target, of course, is twice that number, 2,605. So in terms of the breakdown of these people who have been recruited thus far, and some of them, Frank, were recruited in terms of existing vacancies at the Ministry of Health and Social Services, and other in terms of a temporary structure approved by the Prime Minister to make provision for our fight against the pandemic. 38 medical practitioners, 317 registered nurses, a total of 96 enrolled nurses. Student nurses were recruited to the tune of 26 people, 23 medical interns, 6 emergency care workers. A total of 55 medical graduates were also recruited. We know that some of them were waiting to be recruited in any event, but because of the crisis, this process was expedited. Public health officers, 34, pharmacist assistants, 4, pharmacists, 7. The same number for social workers, radiographers, 1. We know you need to take x-rays of the lungs because that's where the virus usually wreaks havoc. In terms of environmental health practitioners, 55 have been recruited, community health workers 416, and 16 other employees. So what that means, those could be cleaners, those could be porters assisting in the wards, support staff to help the health workers in the front line fight this disease.
I know that at Katitura Youth Centre, they've actually got medical practitioners, people who would normally be interns now. They've been asked to help there. So I prefer having our own people, especially since we have them there and they're without work at the moment. I'll prefer to have that than what I saw now on the news in South Africa, where they've got Cubans moving in and doing their thing now. Not being funny, I mean, it could be the men from Mars as far as I'm concerned. I prefer that we first get our own people busy before we start getting people from outside, where we too know that they'll send us those people that they don't need. So you're not getting the first, in terms of quality, necessarily the first choice. You're standing in the back. So I might as well use my own people first and then take that as a second option.
Of course, especially if the expertise is available locally. And we know some of these employees will be assisting at roadblocks to screen people for their body temperature. So it need not be medical professionals at all times.
Yeah, and it's a good internship for them. They can learn in the process. But as per usual, we've also brought you a positive message, this time from Ryan Nyambe, sorry, my fault. He's telling us how he handles COVID at home.
Hi guys, my name is Ryan Nyambe. I play for Black Rovers. I just want to tell you guys, advise you guys to stay indoors, and I hope you guys are keeping safe because COVID is hard, and it's a time to be sticking together and do the right thing. And but yeah, basically, so hope everyone's keeping safe and staying indoors. Stay safe, guys.
Short and sweet, for a change.
Yeah, remember to stay at home, comply with the regulations, and the better we behave, the better the likelihood of not having the lockdown extended.
Yeah, I think that's very important, that the more we now do to contribute towards it, that we can also assist, even that after the 4th, when things start possibly going the normal route, where gradual integration takes place again, that we follow those rules strictly. You could see yesterday again, securities in the Grove Mall, for example, they had a hard time in the beginning getting people to simply stay in line, keep the 1 meter distance, and so on. You could see what happened was at places, supermarkets, they're used to having their rows organized and it's all working well. But now for the first time that people are allowed to actually buy winter clothing and children's clothing and so on. Now suddenly you see that everybody wants to be first in there. And it's the same discipline that applies everywhere. It's
of course,
just the way it works.
So, some saw it as a second surge or wave of panic buying, but it could also be because some people got paid in the meantime and therefore had the financial means to invest in winter clothing for their children.
And let's face it, if the school time comes now, and especially also because it's now colder for the first time again, so people will start needing extra clothes. I mean, we all know how children work. I mean, they might wear number 4 today and number 5 is tomorrow. It's just the way it works.
Children on the one hand, but some of us adults may have eaten more at home. So we might also need bigger clothes. Last year's winter clothes won't fit.
Rub it in. Okay. Anyway, and we've got some more clips from the regions for you. So enjoy.
Okay. Oma, magistraturane tukomae ngonena.
Ama zida gaisara tangi kanjindrasa ida inji ata.
Oike ne huron ke amai. Anani investment companies hakomai. Ida kwena huiro kaina ukna ne ai kohas aroma.
Anuma.
Yeah. Kaise trata inji.
Kaise trata manjira konto.
Okay, thank you, mama. Ne tukomae hurona.
Mai to kono kuna. Oh, kaise ta kotangi. Apelo ba. Inspirira no kaise no bataro basi.
Yeah.
Thank you ta kotangi.
Yeah. Oma is very thankful. May God give the hand that gives more years to help and to be blessed from above. Or to ne koma kwepke amai. Haingumbi ke amai. Yeah. Ulike koma ise kwena hama. Yeah.
Bisa magistrature saya.
Kaya.
Okay.
Tangi.
Hi everyone, I'm Ivani and this is Mia, and we are super bored, so we decided to make some clothes here in Rehoboth. We are staying inside in the lockdown. Mia, how are you feeling?
Great.
You feeling great?
Yes.
You heard it, people, so stay inside because it's great.
Experience as
I think the measures that have been put in place, people or the shoppers are really adhering to it. I just came from ShopRite. It's very it's a lot of customers there, but you can see the security personnel making sure that the social distance is really maintained. Now here we are at Pick and Pay. It's smooth. Like I said earlier on, the social distances is there. Not really congested. People now understand, the seriousness of the virus. There hasn't been. As far as I have experienced, not seen any infights. People fighting amongst themselves, and they just adhering to the laws set out.
What did you observe today in terms of the shopping experience?
Due to the COVID-19, we are really suffering. People are up and down for food, so we really need some help from the city of Windhoek, the police, and anybody, the securities.
Now, getting the trolleys together, how much of a challenge was it? Because it's end of the month now.
It's really very hard, but we are coping. We are cleaning the trolleys, sanitizing them, sanitizing the people, so we are on the good track.
Were there a lot of trolleys that you had to pick up?
Yeah, there were really a lot of trolleys that we had to pick up and sanitize and clean.
For end of the month, how would you describe it?
I don't have any predictions.
No, I mean, how was it? Was it a lot more trolleys today than usually?
Yeah, really a lot.
How many would you say that you had to collect?
They are, let me say, 50 to 60 trolleys in an hour.
Is it? And usually how many trolleys do you pick up?
Not really a lot, because the customers are very slow, because then they don't have money within the middle of the month.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Fabiola,
and I'm a community leader from the MG numbers. And the most problem that we have currently is people that are running out of food in their household because they don't have their daily income, especially the ones that are having the small enterprise and the vendors. The problem that we have, it's mostly is mothers that are giving birth, which doesn't have food at all at home. And then secondly is also people that are completely running out of food. So what we help with, for those that have food, at least they assist, they give, and hoping that by the time they run out of food again, our regional councils will have something like now.
So we are hoping, but the next design is not going to happen. The next design is opportunities.
Stop the stop? Jesus!
No, you are not wearing anything. Production as well as the ongoing use of these units, we have highly prioritized local employment creation by making use of locally manufactured sanitizer, like this is from Salute Trading CC, 100% local, as well as the production. Once we get the expected level of demand for these units, we are looking at outsourcing the production to fellow SMEs that are owned by artisans, just to create local employment and empower upcoming SMEs as well. Thank you very much. Virus. So you hold it here. Okay. Completely hands-free. Okay. You're done. So when you're done, you walk in. Okay. And then you see there's a step here. Inside, if somebody was to take the footage, there's a step here. Basic instructions. You step on it, still it's hands-free. And then you're out. So we need to obviously increase the capacity of the nozzles. The innovation in itself was very tricky to put together. Currently there's very few pumps, at least locally, that are produced that are able to put water at that pressure to create the mystifying effect that is necessary to execute this particular machine. We had to modify a pump with an external power source that is able to run the pump for a long period of time, so that this particular innovation can work in villages, in outposts, border posts. We have an issue right now with even the prisons, where people are not allowed to bring food into the prisons, but then workers are going to prisons every day and they might take the virus in. Now you see dangerous criminals must be put on parole because there's no other strategy. This particular innovation is simple to make, it's low cost, it can be deployed. We are able to scale the manufacturing process, and it's Namibian made. So we don't need to depend on external parties to address the problems we can address internally. You can quickly clean there if you guys want to take that. Yeah, you can have a look at that. Donna, Salute.
You know what you want to do? Huh? You must first dry your hands, then when you come, because you can see the steam.
Oh, you can
just
perhaps do it again. Okay, just hold on. Yeah. People can see the.
So you can see the so then it just shows that it got wet.
That last part I find very interesting. It's exactly what you say. We need to find out how far it was tested and is it quality approved and assured and whatever. But I can imagine that, especially in villages, where, let's say, you have lesser access to running water and people cannot afford to wash every day or whatever, that thing might give an interesting alternative.
Yes, I'm very impressed with Namibians, Frank. The innovation that we see over the last couple of weeks is really amazing. So we need to capitalize on that, particularly as we strive to revive our economy post-COVID-19, but also how we've been rallying to help support those who are more vulnerable than we are in terms of providing
That's been
food.
a big thing, yeah.
Also how the local authorities and central government, how, the common enemy is the virus. So how many of us are doing our part to assist one another. So it's beautiful to see that, and it's lovely to be a Namibian.
And that's not the only initiative. I remember yesterday I shared another post on our intercompany WhatsApp group, where there are other people where you also simply put your foot on a pedal and it starts activating a pump, and then you can disinfect your hands. And I know that Mr. Botha has actually indicated that they would like to introduce that into the company.
Yes.
Also, it's also a locally manufactured initiative.
Put your foot down.
Put your foot down.
Yeah. So
put your foot on COVID.
Yes, yeah. So what we do know is the initial lockdown, which lapsed last Friday, the 17th of April, targeted the Khomas and the Erongo regions. So these two regions have been in the business of lockdown for a bit longer than the rest of the country, although many of the regulations had already applied countrywide. So you spoke to our colleague Otis Fink earlier to give us an update about how matters stand at the Namibian coast. Based
Hi, welcome back, and we now switch over to Otis Fink. He's the journalist in charge of the operations down on the Erongo side. Hi, Otis, can you hear me?
Hello, Frank. Yeah, loud and clear, loud and clear.
Okay, so tell us a bit more. What's happening at the coast at the moment? I mean, we heard quite a number of things are happening now that it's month end and people want to do their thing and not allowed to do so. So just tell us more.
Yes, we know all businesses definitely took a hit since the inception of COVID-19. So some of the businesses were closed. So the clothing stores and so reopened yesterday in the mall also. But things went quite orderly, I must say. I went around, I visited, and yes, there were some queues, but not long queues and stuff like that, and people had to queue, their hands were sanitized, and only a limited amount of people were allowed to enter the mall at a specific point in time. I also did the rounds. Social distancing since is still a huge problem in areas such as Harvard and Kusatmund. People are not adhering to the measures, to the social distancing measures. Yes, so in a nutshell, that's the situation as is. It was quite quiet for a month and yesterday evening when I went through the streets. So I must say that's a positive.
Okay, because that's good news, because here in Windhoek it seemed to pick up a lot. But talking further back on Friday, there seemed to be an issue with the fisheries and people who wanted to go angling.
Demonstration against regulations preventing angling during the lockdown was called off by the police here in Office Bay. So a group of anglers wanted to hand over a petition to representatives of the Ministry of Fisheries. So they want regulations to be amended so that they can be able to go and fish in order to feed their families. So unfortunately, no petition was handed over. Inspector Eleni Shapumba, the Community Affairs Commander, emphasized that no demonstrations are allowed during a state of emergency, and they did not have permission to hand over the petition. And he said the bottom line is that no demonstrations are allowed during this time. And then also, hundreds of people were told to go home on Friday after queuing to verify their information for the 750 emergency income grant application at the Kusamun Stadium. The Rongo Regional Council said via notice that the verification process was for people who applied with more than one cell phone number and for those whose applications had been put on hold. So hundreds of people, however, flocked to the stadium when the process started, this verification process, and the armed forces had to intervene to ensure that everybody practices distancing. The process, however, continued orderly on Friday morning, but at 10 o'clock, people were informed to rather go home after verification officers received a message stating that another way will be devised to assist the applicant.
Okay, that's good news, because I think what worried most of us is the fact that you simply send the people home without any possibility of verifying that they actually might have used 2 cell numbers simply because they didn't receive a return message. So at the end of the day, these people will be allowed to make sure that they do qualify. Otis, unfortunately, that is all the time we have today. Thank you very much for phoning in and telling us what's going on, and remain healthy. Have a nice day.
It's a pleasure, and you guys keep safe in London.
Yes, Frank, fishing remains a bone of contention. People are not allowed to fish for leisure purposes. But if you fish for the pot, or to sell that so that you can sustain your family, it needs to be considered. But part of the challenge at the moment also is the interpretation of the regulations. And many of the law enforcement officials apply a one-size-fits-all approach. But part of the amended regulations is one stipulation that if you are found to be outside your residence for a justifiable reason under those circumstances, these officials need to be discretionary about the powers that they exercise. But that message doesn't necessarily filter through to them.
Yeah, and what worries me about it, and it was the same thing, I remember when this lockdown was prolonged and it was extended, in fact, into the country. I remember phoning the police and asking them, are the people at the roadblocks informed this time? And I was told, yes, they are, and we will have learned from the previous experience. And they hadn't, because the next moment you had these long queues at Okahandja roadblock and wherever. And the same applies here. If somebody tells me that I'm a farmer and I'm allowed to grow my vegetable and bring them to the market, surely for fish the same counts. I can understand if they don't allow me taking a 4x4 bucky and simply going for a bit of an angling trip. But if I'm a person who's organized, and you can quickly see the difference between somebody who does it on an everyday basis, he's differently organized and equipped and so on. There'll be more than one person because the one does this and the other and so on. So there needs to be a bit of common sense, and that's what I keep missing sometimes. And the unfortunate part is that the bigger portion of police is doing exactly what all of the rest of the population is doing. They're following the line, they're doing it right. But there's always this one or other person who suddenly feels so, I don't know, empowered or whatever. I had an incident yesterday, and I won't say the name now, where we went to a supermarket, and I literally counted 30 people coming out. But this guy was now simply enjoying the fact that he would decide when the next 10 people went in. Until literally somebody from management came out to him and said, I mean, did you ever look at the shop? It's empty. When are you planning on allowing the next people in? But he simply felt, wow, I'm the man, you know, and that's what I keep missing. And obviously we've got some police officers who also feel empowered in that way, and they suddenly try and fill the role of God, and that shouldn't be the case.
In the same vein, there are some of us Namibians who are also chance takers.
No, true, but that's why they're there, and that's why it takes a bit of finesse and understanding. I don't have any doubt about the chances. I mean, that is there. But the fact is, in this difficult time, these people should know better than to simply feel they've got the power. They will show you who's in charge. Anyway, Ronelle Rademacher of the Republikein newspaper, she spoke to Dr. Japie van Zyl, who we all know as former NASA scientist, and he's now busy. He's one of the directors of Fast Detect, and she spoke about what he intends doing in this COVID time.
Good afternoon to Dr. Japie van Zyl, all the way from Pasadena in America. Japie, welcome with NMH this afternoon. Dr. Japie van Zyl used to be Director of Astronomy and Physics at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. He retired last year, and since then he has been busier than ever. Amongst all, Japie, you started a business or a company called Fast Detect. You are the CEO of Fast Detect, and currently you are working on a machine that will be able to do COVID-19 testing within a very short time. Tell us more about that.
Yes, Ronelle, as you mentioned, I retired from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in about a year ago. And I always said that it's time for me to get from the outer space and do something more related to Earth and help out Earth. And I never thought that this opportunity would come by so quickly.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. We are working on a machine to identify the coronavirus, specifically that virus that causes this particular COVID-19 disease. We use exactly the same technique that is used in the major laboratories of the world. Right now, the way that the testing is done is people go to sample collection places where trained professionals take a swab inside their nose and in the back of your nose. They put that swab inside a tube, seal it, and send it off to a laboratory for testing. And that is why typically you have to wait 48 hours, 24 to 48 hours sometimes, to get the results back. Of course, that process is a centralized testing model, and it is prone to error because you take the samples, we don't know how well the samples last. They may be exposed to heat or cold or whatever during the handling process. Errors can creep in, and the bottom line is it takes a very long time to do the testing and get the results back to people. What we are working on is a similar machine. It uses that same technique. It's a so-called gold standard technique to identify specific DNA or RNA of a particular organism. So what we have is many countries have developed so-called test kits for this. And what the test kit really is, it is a short segment, synthetic segment of the RNA of this particular virus. So in this process, what you do is you take the virus, the sample that may contain the virus, you then go through a process by which those little templates, we call them primers, if the virus is present, these little primers will go and attach themselves to the RNA of the virus. And that's how you know that the virus is there. We also code each of those little segments with a fluorescent dye. So when they couple to the virus, they actually release that dye, and then you look at how bright the fluorescence is, the light that comes from this. And that's how we can tell how many viruses. We can not only tell that you have the virus, we can also tell how many of the viruses you have. In other words, how infectious you really are at that point in time. Now, our machine is meant to be used on the front line, so to speak. So you will take that nasal swab that I mentioned earlier, and instead of putting it in a tube and sending it off somewhere else, the technician will snip the tip of that tube off into our cylinder, our cartridge, put the cartridge inside the machine, press the button, and depending on how many viruses you have, somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes. If you don't have any viruses, it takes about 15 minutes to get to a no answer, because we want to make sure we run through enough cycles to make sure that there is no virus in there. If you have a lot of viruses, the light will show up very quickly, typically around 10 minutes or so. And then we can tell you on the spot whether you have the virus or not, and whether you are very contagious or you only have a few of the viruses.
Japie, so you are working on a prototype now. So how soon will you be able to make a lot of these machines?
So in the United States, President Trump has increased the capacity of the so-called Food and Drug Administration that we have in the United States that has to approve the use of these machines significantly. And so they've shortened the time to get approval under a so-called emergency use application, which we call an EUA here in the United States. Normally, this is a process that takes 18 months to 2 years to go through. Now it's about 15 days we can get the approval. So we will start that testing for the FDA very early next week, and we hope to submit all the data to them before the end of April. And then hopefully in the middle of May, we will have approval to deploy these machines. In the meantime, we are allowed to use some of these machines for testing purposes, for validation purposes, I should say, in clinics in the United States. And so we have agreements with 2 major hospitals here in the United States to start testing it. And then in parallel, we will be manufacturing more of the machines, assuming that we will get approval, because there's no fundamental reason why this test should not be approved. And we will then hope to be in full production somewhere towards the later part of May, maybe early June.
Wonderful. Japie, and what will a machine like that cost?
We are shooting, Ronel, typically these machines that are in the major laboratories are on the order somewhere between 50,000, and if you add all the sample handling equipment that goes with them, it can be as high as $250,000 to outfit a laboratory like that. We are shooting to have this machine available for less than $1,000. And the main reason is we want this to be accessible in doctors' offices, pharmacies, and so on. So we changed this paradigm of a centralized testing model to one where we have a distributed testing. You think you may have the disease, rather than your doctor sending you off to some sample collection site, the doctor can do the test in their office. The reason we picked 15 minutes is a little bit of a combination of new technologies we have, but you also have to give the biology enough time to react. So our goal is to have it finish a test in a typical time you spend in your doctor's office anyway. So when you walk into your doctor's office, they can take the swab right away, put it in the machine, and while the doctor is doing their normal investigation and discussion with you, then the machine will finish its job before you actually leave the office, and the doctor can tell you whether you have the disease or not. Incredible.
There was just a little bit of a time delay. The amount that you mentioned, is it $1,500 US?
No, we are trying to do it in under $1,000 US.
Okay, under 1,000. Okay, wonderful. Japie, all in all, what is the situation in America like at the moment? What we hear, it's not good. You are also in lockdown for how long already, and what is the prospects at the moment?
Yeah, there's a lot of debate going on in the United States. First, let me say the situation is very, very serious in the United States. I looked this morning, every morning when I get up, I look at the numbers. We are over 400,000 cases in the United States now identified. And just yesterday, we had more than 1,800 deaths in the United States. It is extremely serious. The projection is that the death rate will reach its peak somewhere in the next 2 weeks, probably by April 17 in the United States. And so if we are already at 1,800 deaths a day, we hope the number doesn't go up a whole lot. But initial estimates was that the United States would have up to as many as 2.2 million deaths. That's now been revised downwards to maybe 100,000 or so. And of course, we're hoping that it would be less than that. But it is very, very serious. We have been under lockdown, and part of the reason that the numbers are projected now much, much lower than it was earlier is that this so-called social distancing, we're not technically in a complete lockdown. We are allowed to go to the supermarket and buy food and things like that. People are still allowed to walk their dog outside. You're just not allowed to have parties in your house or congregations of people together. And unfortunately, things like churches and so on have all been stopped at the moment, because those are large gatherings of people that can distribute this disease even further. But it turns out, it appears as if those social distancing measures that were placed very early, especially here in California, that has paid off. And now it looks like the numbers may be significantly lower. But, you know, it's still very, very serious if you have tens of thousands of people die. We did not want anybody to die of this disease, but of course, this is not all in our own hands. And the key thing here is still the rate at which we can test people. The US has now tested more than 2 million people. But if you think about it, we are a population of 350 million people in the United States. So it's still a very, very small portion of our population that has been tested. And as you know, you mentioned to me before we started talking on the show, is that the 3 people in Namibia have been declared free of the coronavirus. So it's not just testing a person once. You have to test them a number of times in order to make sure that they do not have the virus anymore. The big question now in the United States is besides this virus itself and the death toll and the enormous sacrifice that people are making, is the incredible impact on the economy in the United States. We are now approaching 40 million people out of work in the United States. We went from a roaring economy that was the best in more than 50 years to an unemployment that may approach as many as 30% of the United States here in little less than 2 months. So that is as serious for the future of this country as is the disease itself. And there's, of course, a lot of discussion about how does one open this in a safe manner so that you don't spread the disease all over again. And the key to all of that, again, is to have the capacity to test a lot of people very quickly.
Jalpi, thank you so much for talking to us today, and all the best, and be safe and stay healthy. It was good seeing you.
Thank you, Renelle.
Yeah, just goes to show you can't kill a busy mind. I mean, this man hasn't been busy out there for long, and he's already, again, in the midst of where it matters. And he's got a couple of nice ideas. I mean, I worked it out quickly. 1.8 million sounds like a lot of money, but if you can get a couple of those machines to Namibia, instead of sending everything to those pathological center, you simply do it wherever you are in the main centers of Namibia, you would save a lot of time and money at the end of the day.
What's the most important for me, Frank, is that he's a Namibian.
Yeah.
So Namibians, you know, making us proud even in the United States of America, and well done to Dr. Jalpi and his team. So we have the appeal that's in every show for you to please share some positive, uplifting, inspiring material with us. The WhatsApp number remains the same, 081-17 00010, 081-170 00010, whether it's a picture of a sunset, of a beautiful sky, of some nature aspect, or animals, or your children, or a family. Please share those with us so that we wrap up the show with something positive, something constructive, something inspiring. As far as today's positive pictures are concerned, we take a look at Karen Grünschloss's picture. She spotted this monitor lizard in the Mahangu National Park. Quite an impressive sight, Frank.
And look, it's almost green. It's almost like a chameleon, and where it starts adjusting its colors. Eh?
Absolutely.
And these things are strong. I've seen them already out in the wild. I mean, just the way it moves, he actually shows you, I'm in charge here.
And what we do know about COVID-19 is Mother Nature is claiming her space back and claiming the respect back. So we need to be grateful for that too.
Yeah.
Another picture by Liana Trion captured this magnificent sunset. You know, our sunsets are just breathtaking.
Yeah, look, April, May is made for this sort of thing.
Yeah. So that's absolutely beautiful. So share those positive pictures with us, share those messages with us. We'd like to share them with the rest of the country.
Yeah, and one of these days you'll actually be able to enjoy a sunset like that one with a glass of wine again.
Yes.
So there's a couple of guys
Provided
looking forward to that.
Provided we behave, because if we do, this might be the second last weekend in lockdown.
Exactly. And with that thought, we leave you for today. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Denver, for joining me in the studio.
Thank you, Frank. Have a beautiful Sunday. Goodbye.
Yes, and remain safe.